Rabbit dragged a blanket, what was under it, made everyone cry. The first time the rabbit dragged the blanket across the yard, Claire Bennett thought the wind had caught it. It was early morning in the little town of Maple Hollow, and the whole neighborhood was still waking slowly under a pale blue spring sky. Dew clung to the grass, sparrows hopped along the fence. Somewhere down the street, a lawnmower coughed once and gave up. Claire stood at her kitchen sink, rinsing a coffee mug when she saw something pale blue moving near the garden shed. At first she frowned. The old baby blanket had been folded on the porch bench the night before. Her son Noah had taken it outside while playing with the family rabbit Button and must have forgotten to bring it in. Claire had meant to grab it before bed, but by then she had been too tired to care. The blanket was faded, soft from years of washing and covered in tiny white stars. It had belonged to Noah when he was a baby. He was 9 now, far too old to need it, but he kept it for Button, who liked to nestle into it on cold evenings. Now the blanket was moving across the grass, slowly, awkwardly, in little jerks. Claire leaned closer to the window. A small white rabbit was gripping one corner of the blanket in its teeth and dragging it backward across the yard. Button. Claire blinked. "What are you doing?" Button was not usually allowed loose in the yard unless someone was outside with him. He had a secure hutch under the covered patio and a fenced exercise pen beside the vegetable garden. But Noah had built a little cardboard tunnel the day before, and Claire realized the pen gate must not have latched properly after evening playtime. She dried her hands and went to the back door. "Button," she called, opening it. "You little escape artist." The rabbit froze. He was a small, round, white rabbit with gray ears, a gray nose, and black eyes that always looked slightly surprised. He had been rescued from a parking lot the previous winter, thin and shivering beneath a car, and Noah had loved him from the moment the animal shelter allowed them to foster him. Button was usually gentle and lazy, happy to chew hay, flop dramatically in sunbeams, and tolerate Noah's endless whispered secrets. But that morning he did not come when Claire called. Instead, he tightened his grip on the blanket and pulled. The fabric scraped over the damp grass. Claire stepped outside, still barefoot. "Button, stop, you'll ruin it." Button dragged the blanket another few inches, not toward his hutch, not toward the porch, toward the back fence. Claire slowed. The fence separated their yard from the overgrown lot behind the house, a narrow strip of land nobody seemed to own or maintain. It held weeds, old shrubs, a collapsed wooden bench, and a patch of blackberry brambles so thick that Noah called it the Dragon Forest. Beyond the lot stood an abandoned bungalow that had been empty since the elderly owner died 3 years earlier. Button reached the fence, dropped the blanket, and squeezed his nose through a gap near the bottom. Then he thumped one back foot. Claire stopped. Rabbit owners knew that sound. A thump was not play, it was alarm. Button grabbed the blanket again and pulled it against the fence gap, as if trying to push the fabric through. He tugged, dropped it, thumped, tugged again. Claire's irritation faded. "Button?" The rabbit looked back at her, then toward the gap, then back at her again. A chill moved over Claire's skin despite the mild morning. She crossed the yard more slowly now and crouched near the fence. The blanket lay half-bunched at the gap, one corner muddy from Button's mouth. Claire peered through the slats into the overgrown lot. At first, she saw only weeds moving in the breeze. Then she heard something, a tiny sound, weak, high, almost like a kitten. Claire held her breath. The sound came again, from under the blanket. No, not under the blanket in their yard, from just beyond the fence where weeds had collapsed into a shallow hollow beneath the brambles. Button thumped again. Claire stood so fast she almost fell backward. "Noah!" she called toward the house. Her son appeared at the back door seconds later in pajama trousers and a dinosaur t-shirt, hair sticking up in every direction. "What?" "Stay on the porch." "Why?" "Just stay there." Of course, he came halfway down the steps. Claire lifted a hand. "Noah." He froze. Button grabbed the blanket and pulled again, frantic now. Noah's eyes widened. Why does he have my blanket? I don't know yet. Claire ran to the side gate, shoved it open, and hurried around to the alley that led behind the houses. The overgrown lot was accessible through a broken section of chain-link fence. She pushed through carefully, wet weeds brushing against her jeans, and followed the sound. Button remained on the other side of the fence, moving back and forth, thumping whenever Claire slowed. The cry came again. This time Claire knew what it was, a baby animal. She parted the weeds near the brambles. Then she saw what Button had been trying to cover with the blanket. A cardboard box lay half hidden under the blackberry canes. It was soggy from dew, one side caved in, the top flaps partly closed. Inside, curled together in a nest of torn newspaper and an old towel, were 5 newborn kittens. Claire covered her mouth. They were tiny, eyes still closed, bodies no bigger than her palm. Their fur was damp. 2 were gray, 1 black, 1 orange, and 1 white with dark patches. They wriggled weakly against each other, crying in thin, fading voices. The towel beneath them was wet. Ants were crawling along one corner of the box. A plastic shopping bag lay nearby, tied loosely and torn open, as if someone had carried the box there during the night and left it. "Oh no," Claire whispered. Noah's voice came from the fence. "Mom?" Claire turned sharply. "Stay there." "What is it?" She looked back at the kittens, then at Button, who stood on the other side of the fence with the blue blanket still clenched in his teeth. He had dragged the blanket because the kittens were cold. Claire felt tears spring to her eyes. "It's kittens," she called, voice shaking. "Baby kittens." Noah gasped. "Are they alive?" "Yes, but they need help." Claire pulled out her phone and called the Maple Hollow Animal Rescue emergency line. Her hands trembled so badly she nearly dropped it. A woman named Mara answered, calm and alert. "I found newborn kittens in a box behind my house," Claire said quickly. "They're cold, wet, and crying. I don't see a mother cat." "Do not feed cows milk," Mara said immediately. "Do not try to bottle feed unless instructed. Keep them warm. How old?" "Eyes closed. Umbilical cords may be still there on some." "Very young, maybe under a week. Can you safely bring the whole box inside?" Claire looked at the brambles. "Yes." "Use gloves or a towel. Keep them together. Warmth first. I'm 20 minutes away." Claire hung up and carefully lifted the soggy box from the weeds. It nearly collapsed in her hands, so she supported it from underneath and hurried back toward the yard. Button followed along the fence line from the other side, thumping, stopping, watching. Noah stood by the gate now, pale and crying. "Who left them there?" he asked. "I don't know." "Why would someone do that?" Claire did not answer. There were questions children asked that had no answer gentle enough. Inside the kitchen, Claire lined a laundry basket with towels fresh from the dryer. She placed the kittens inside, then gently tucked Noah's blue blanket around the outer edges for warmth, not covering their faces. The kittens cried more strongly once they felt heat. That was a good sign, she hoped. Button sat just inside the back door, nose twitching, ears forward. Noah knelt beside him. "You found them?" Button sniffed Noah's hand, then looked toward the basket. Noah's face crumpled. "He tried to give them my blanket." Claire hugged her son with one arm while keeping her eyes on the kittens. "Yes," she whispered. "He did." Mara from the rescue arrived 18 minutes later with a carrier, heat packs, formula, gloves, and the weary urgency of someone who had seen too much human carelessness and still chosen to keep answering calls. She was in her 40s, with silver threaded through her dark hair and mud already on her boots from some earlier rescue. She examined the kittens quickly. 5 neonates, she said. Cold stress, dehydrated. No obvious injuries. This one is weaker. She pointed to the smallest kitten, the white one with dark patches. It barely moved except for a weak, open-mouthed cry. Noah made a broken sound. Mara looked at him gently. "They're alive because you found them early." Noah shook his head. "Button found them." Mara glanced down at the rabbit sitting near the door. Button stared back at her. Claire told her what had happened. The blanket, the fence, the thumping, the box hidden under the brambles. Mara listened, and her expression softened. Rabbits are prey animals, she said. They notice small sounds and danger very quickly. He may have heard them crying during the night or at dawn. He was trying to warm them, Noah said. Mara smiled sadly. Maybe. Or maybe he associated the blanket with comfort and dragged it toward the distress sound. We can't know exactly, but he absolutely alerted you. Button began grooming one ear as if bored by the praise. Mara prepared to take the kittens to the rescue center, where they had incubators and trained bottle feeders. Before she left, Noah touched the edge of the carrier. "Will they die?" he whispered. Mara did not lie. "They are very fragile, but we will do everything we can." Noah nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. Claire looked at the soggy cardboard box on the kitchen floor. A rage she rarely felt began burning beneath her sadness. Someone had abandoned newborn kittens in the cold. Someone had left them under brambles where nobody would see them. A rabbit had done more for them than a person had. The rescue center posted a brief notice later that day asking for information about abandoned kittens found near Willow Lane. No accusations, no names. Just a request and a reminder that unwanted litters could be surrendered safely, no questions asked. By evening, the post had spread across Maple Hollow. People were horrified, some were angry, some cried, many offered donations. Noah asked every hour if Mara had called. At dinner, he barely ate. Button sat in his hutch on the patio with fresh hay, water, and the blue blanket, now washed and dried. He seemed normal again, but Noah kept going outside to check him. "You saved them," Noah whispered through the hutch wire. Button chewed hay. Claire stood in the doorway, watching her son talk to the little rabbit who had somehow dragged a piece of comfort toward abandoned lives. It made her think of the winter they found Button. Noah had been struggling then. His father, Claire's husband, had left the previous year. Not died, not disappeared, just left, slowly at first and then completely, moving to another city with promises to call and visit that became less frequent until they became little more than calendar disappointments. Noah had become quiet after that, angry sometimes, too serious for 9. Then they found Button under a parked car outside the grocery store during a cold rain. Noah had refused to leave him. The shelter said the rabbit was underweight, probably dumped after Easter when someone got tired of caring for him. Noah had cried that night in a way he had not cried when his father missed his birthday. "Why do people leave things that need them?" he had asked. Claire had not known what to say then either. Now he had seen it again. Only this time, Button had found the ones left behind. At 10:17 that night, Mara called. "All 5 made it through the first few hours," she said. Claire closed her eyes. Noah, sitting beside her on the couch, grabbed her arm. "They're alive," she told him. He burst into tears. Mara continued. "They're still critical, especially the smallest. We found fleas and they were very cold, but they're feeding tiny amounts. We'll know more in the morning." Noah took the phone. "Can we name them?" Mara paused. Claire could almost hear her smile. "We try not to name critical bottle babies too quickly." Noah looked devastated. "But," Mara added, "temporary names are sometimes useful." Noah sniffed. "The white one is Star because Button used my star blanket." Mara said softly, "Star it is." The others became Pebble, Mango, Shadow, and Misty. Over the next week, the kittens became part of the Bennett household, even though they were not physically there. Every morning, Mara sent an update. Every afternoon, Noah drew pictures for them. Claire drove donations to the rescue center, kitten formula, towels, disinfectant, paper towels, and money she could barely spare but gave anyway. The kittens fought. Pebble gained weight first. Mango screamed during every feeding. Shadow learned to latch on the bottle. Misty slept curled over Star like a tiny guardian. Star remained fragile. On the 4th night, Mara called late. Claire knew before answering that it was not good. Star had stopped feeding. Noah sat on the stairs in the dark, listening. Claire put the phone on speaker because hiding bad news never made it kinder. Mara's voice was gentle. We're warming her and giving supportive care. She's very small. Sometimes with abandoned neonates, even when we do everything right. Noah began shaking his head. No. Claire sat beside him and pulled him close. Button found her, Noah sobbed. She has to live. Mara was silent for a moment. Then she said, We're not giving up tonight. That was enough to hold on to. The next morning, Star took 2 milliliters of formula. Not much. Everything. By the end of the second week, all 5 kittens were stable. Their eyes began to open. Mara invited Claire and Noah to visit, not to handle them yet, but to see them through the nursery window. Noah wore his cleanest shirt and carried a drawing of Button dragging the blanket across the yard with 5 tiny kittens underneath it like treasure. At the rescue center, the kittens lay in a warm incubator, larger now, but still small enough to fit together in a pile. Star opened one cloudy blue eye and wobbled her head. Noah pressed both hands to the glass. She's real, he whispered. Mara stood beside him. Very real. Will they remember Button? No, Mara said honestly. Probably not. Noah thought about that. Will people remember? Mara looked at him. Yes, she said. I think they will. The story of Button and the blanket changed Maple Hollow in ways Claire did not expect. At first, people simply wanted updates on the kittens. Then they began asking what they could do. Mara and the rescue center organized a community meeting about abandoned pets, spaying and neutering, and safe surrender options. Claire spoke briefly, though she hated public speaking. She stood in the community hall holding the washed blue blanket folded in her hands. My son's rabbit dragged this across our yard, she said. Under it, or where he was trying to take it, were 5 newborn kittens someone left to die. I don't want whoever did it punished more than I want this never to happen again. People need to know there are safe places to bring animals. They need to know babies can suffer within hours. They need to know dumping is not mercy. Her voice broke. Noah, sitting in the front row with Button's carrier beside him, looked up at her with shining eyes. Claire continued. A little rabbit heard them when we didn't. We should be ashamed of that, and then we should do better. The room was silent. Then people applauded. A local veterinarian offered discounted spay and neuter appointments for low-income families. The rescue center set up a 24-hour safe surrender box for emergencies, monitored and temperature-controlled. Volunteers began distributing flyers. The town council approved funding for a small animal welfare program. The school invited Mara to give talks about responsible pet care. Noah brought Button to show and tell only after Claire confirmed with the teacher that it would be calm, safe, and short. Button sat in his carrier while Noah told the class, Rabbits are not toys. They get scared. They need hay every day. And sometimes they are heroes. A girl asked, Did he know they were kittens? Noah considered this. He knew they were crying, he said. That was enough. By the time the kittens were 8 weeks old, they were healthy, chaotic, and impossible not to love. Star, once the weakest, became the boldest, climbing over her siblings and yelling whenever food appeared. Mango was still dramatic. Pebble loved laps. Shadow liked hiding in sleeves. Misty followed Star everywhere. Mara began reviewing adoption applications. Noah wanted to adopt all 5. Claire said no before he finished asking. 1, he pleaded. Claire had expected this. Noah, we already have Button. Cats and rabbits can live together if careful, Mara said sometimes. Mara also said it takes planning, separate spaces, supervision, and the right personalities. I listened. I know you did. He looked at her with desperate hope. Star only lived because Button found her. Claire closed her eyes. That was unfair because it was true and because children are experts at finding the one argument that goes straight through armor. She called Mara. Mara said Star was bold, social, and likely to do well in a careful home. She also said a kitten and rabbit introduction would need to be slow, supervised, and possibly never allow direct contact if either animal was stressed. Noah agreed to every condition. Star came home 3 weeks later. Button was unimpressed. For the first month, Star lived in a separate room and met Button only through a secure barrier. Star was fascinated. Button pretended not to notice her, then deliberately flopped beside the gate whenever she watched. Over time, under careful supervision, they learned to share space calmly. They were never left alone together. Claire became strict about that, but sometimes in the evenings, Button would lie on one side of the room and Star would curl on the armchair nearby, both safe, both content, both survivors of human abandonment who had somehow found the same home. Noah called them the found family. Claire did not correct him. The other kittens found good homes in town. Pebble went to a retired teacher, Mango to a family with older children who loved his noise. Shadow and Misty were adopted together by a quiet couple who sent photos every month. The rescue center kept their first photo, the 5 tiny bodies in the blue blanket, on the wall near the nursery. Under it, Mara placed a note, found because someone listened. Years passed. Button grew older. His gray ears faded lighter, and he became less interested in exploring, more interested in naps and hay. Star grew into a sleek white and black cat with a loud voice and a habit of sleeping near Noah's homework. Noah grew too, taller, kinder, and fiercely protective of animals. He volunteered at the rescue center when he was old enough, cleaning cages, folding towels, and learning that rescue was not only dramatic saves but daily, ordinary care. Claire changed as well. For a long time after her husband left, she had thought of abandonment as a wound that only proved something about the person left behind. Not enough, not worth staying for. But Button, Star, and the kittens taught her a different truth. Being left did not make a creature less worthy. Sometimes it revealed who would come next, who would notice, who would carry warmth across the yard in their teeth because something small was crying. One spring morning, nearly 6 years after the rescue, Claire found Noah in the backyard sitting beside Button's hutch. Button was very old by then, slow and cloudy-eyed, but still comfortable. The blue star blanket lay folded beneath him. Noah, now 15, rested one hand gently near the rabbit. "He's tired," Noah said. Claire sat beside him. "Yes." "Do you think he remembers finding them?" Claire looked at Button. The rabbit's nose twitched faintly. "I don't know," she said. Noah nodded. "I do. I know you do. Star wouldn't be here." "No. I think he saved me too," Noah said quietly. Claire turned toward him. Noah looked down. "After Dad left, I felt like if someone could leave me, maybe people just leave. Then Button got left and we kept him. Then he found the kittens and Star stayed. It made things feel..." He searched for the word. "Repairable." Claire's eyes filled. She put an arm around him. "Yes," she whispered. "That's the word." Button died peacefully a few months later, wrapped in the blue blanket he had once dragged across the yard. Noah and Claire buried him beneath the apple tree near the fence, close to the spot where he had thumped that morning until someone paid attention. Star sat in the window watching the whole time. Noah placed a small wooden marker at the grave. Button, he heard them cry. The rescue center shared the news, and people from all over town left comments, memories, and photos of the kittens grown into beloved cats. Mara came by with flowers and cried with them in the yard. She brought a framed copy of Noah's childhood drawing, Button pulling the blanket toward the fence, 5 tiny kittens waiting beyond it. "I thought you should have this," she said. Noah held it carefully. "Thank you." Years later, Noah would tell Button's story during rescue center volunteer orientations. He would stand in front of new volunteers, no longer a little boy, but still carrying the same gentleness, and say, "The first rescue I ever saw was done by a rabbit." People always smiled. Then he told them the rest. The box, the cold, the blanket, Star almost dying, the town learning to do better. By the end, they were not smiling in the same way. Noah would finish with the lesson Mara had taught him. You don't have to understand everything to respond to suffering. Button didn't know what abandoned kittens were. He knew something tiny was crying. That was enough for him to act. It should be enough for us, too. And that was why the story stayed in Maple Hollow. Not because it was cute, though people tried to make it cute. A rabbit dragging a baby blanket across a yard could have been funny, but what was under it made everyone cry because it revealed both the worst and the best of people. Someone had abandoned 5 helpless lives. Someone else answered the call. A child learned that being left was not the end of a story. A town learned that safe surrender, education, and compassion could prevent suffering before it started. And one small rabbit, once abandoned himself, became the unlikely messenger between those two truths. So before we go, remember this. Sometimes heroes are not loud. Sometimes they are small, soft, and easily overlooked. Sometimes they do not bark, roar, or lead rescuers for miles. Sometimes they simply drag a faded blue blanket across wet grass because, beyond the fence, newborn kittens are cold and crying. Button could not save them alone, but he could show the humans where love was needed. And because he did, 5 tiny lives were pulled from the cold. A boy's heart began to heal, and everyone who heard the story remembered that compassion often begins with noticing the smallest cry.